Good evening. I'm Yamisha Sendor, coming to you from the NBC News Bureau in Washington, D.C. And here are some of the stories we're following now tonight. "12,000 people dead and counting as hope for finding survivors becomes a race against time. The number of bodies being found in Turkey and Syria continues to rise. And after pitching his economic plan before a joint session of Congress, the president takes his message directly to American workers.
These benefits belong to you, the American worker. You earned it.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy promises victory during a surprise visit to London. Plus, we'll examine the little-known history of forced sterilization among women.
I said, I don't feel right. What was done to me? She turned around and looked at the paperwork and looked back at me nonchalantly. She goes, you had a full hysterectomy.
And enough cocaine is found floating around the Pacific Ocean to supply the country of New Zealand for 30 years. Tonight, desperate search and rescue efforts are underway in Turkey and Syria. After Monday's devastating earthquakes, the death toll has now climbed to 12,000 and is expected to rise in coming days. Heartbreaking scenes like this one are pouring out of the region, where teams are working tirelessly day and night to pull survivors from under the rubble. Plus, new satellite images out today show the sheer level of devastation. These are before and after pictures of towns in Turkey. You can see buildings and homes completely leveled to the ground. The international community is rallying behind Turkey and Syria right now, and more than 45 countries and NGOs have offered aid to them. And rescue teams have also arrived in the region from the U.S., UK, France, Japan, and even Ukraine. NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has more from Turkey. Hey, Gabe.
Yamish, another long, bitterly cold night is underway as search and rescue crews are trying desperately to save as many lives as possible. Here in southern Turkey, it is an around-the-clock rescue mission, and you can see behind me there's an excavator and also crews there on the other side of that pile. They have been here again around the clock, and temperatures have now dipped well below freezing here. The hope is that there might be someone still trapped in all that rubble. And Yamish, I can tell you, earlier today we were in a different town here in southern Turkey, and there were active rescue efforts that managed to find people that had been trapped for nearly 72 hours. We've seen those incredible images of young children, babies being hoisted out of the rubble. And the hope is that may continue. But every second is critical here. Several rescue workers say that they really feel that they're in a race against time. And the desperation felt by many residents here, some of them that lived in this apartment complex or at least are waiting for word about their loved ones. If we look over there, there are people burning fires again on this bitterly cold night. And they are just hoping, praying for any good news that may come out of this. Now, Yamish, in Syria, there is a country ravaged by civil war for so many years. There are now more than 300,000 Syrians displaced as a result of this earthquake, of these series of earthquakes. And here across the region, there are now more than 12,000 people have been killed. That death toll has been rising and is expected to continue to rise. But again, Yamish, here in southern Turkey, this is something we're seeing not just in this city, but city after city. Millions of people in at least 10 major cities across southern Turkey tonight are watching, praying for any good news to come out of these search and rescue efforts. 2 U.S. search and rescue teams are now here on the ground in southern Turkey. They are on the move to one of the most affected regions. But as you can see behind me, Yamish, the need here is simply overwhelming. Back to you.
Joining me now is Joe English. He is an emergency communication specialist for UNICEF. So, Joe, thanks for being here. Now, according to the World Health Organization, as many as 23 million people, including 1.4 million children, have been impacted by this earthquake. This has been one of the deadliest earthquakes since Japan's 9.0 earthquake in 2011. So what is UNICEF seeing on the ground in Turkey and Syria right now?
Yeah, the situation is desperate. And honestly, I think that 1.4 million figure will end up being a conservative estimate. We know that in Turkey and in Syria, a large proportion of the population are under the age of 18. And children are always among the most vulnerable in these kind of crises. I mean, you can just imagine being a parent, waking up at 4 a.m. by these rumbles and just the adrenaline kicks in and you're doing your best to find your kids to get them to some kind of safety. Now, the lucky ones are the ones who are able to escape these buildings, maybe with the pajamas on their back, with a warm blanket. Many others, as we've seen from the footage of the last couple of days, weren't so lucky. And search and rescue is absolutely critical. But we're now entering the point of time where, it's less and less likely you're going to find survivors, especially because temperatures are dropping each night below freezing. And so now what UNICEF is doing is we're really doing all we can to reach the children and families who are affected, who are now many living in their cars, in public spaces, in malls, in mosques, to be providing them with the basics of life so that they're going to survive the coming days and weeks.
It's such a tough situation, and I want to ask you specifically about Syria. A crucial humanitarian aid corridor has been temporarily closed due to the earthquake and all the damage that came. There's also delivery of UN assistance has been temporarily suspended, according to a regional officer. This, of course, is a country that's dealing with a civil war and has very little, if any, machinery to help with the recovery efforts. So talk to me a bit about the situation specifically in Syria. How worried are you about what's going on there?
Incredibly worried. I think the good news is I've heard from colleagues that we are hoping that we're going to be able to get aid rolling across the border tomorrow. And honestly, it cannot come soon enough. We have an established humanitarian response in Syria, including in the northwest. We work with incredible local organizations to reach children and families who've been affected now by 12 years of war. And so for many of them, this is just the latest crisis that they are facing. But the needs now are going to be so much larger. This has happened at the worst possible time of year. And so we need to be getting in, we need to be providing these families with, with clean water, with safe drinking water, because we've already seen a cholera outbreak in Syria. And that is exactly the kind of waterborne disease which, if left unchecked, can create a secondary crisis, a crisis upon a crisis. So the sooner that we can be ensuring these families have safe drinking water, have warm blankets, warm winter clothes for babies, we are seeing these images of people sheltering in the streets with next to nothing. And so it's simple things, and we know how to do it, but we need to have that access as soon as possible.
And you just talked about some of the crucial things that are needed: warm blankets, clean water. So how can international allies and organizations assist Syria and overcome the hurdles of damaged roads and closed borders?
Yeah, it's critical that we get support of not only governments, but also, men and women out in the street who may be thinking, how can we help? And you can go to unicefusa.org, and there's a donate link there. And, I've seen it. I've seen the difference that these kind of donations make. And not much will buy you a clean water or nutrition packs for kids. But also a key thing in the coming days is going to be providing psychosocial support, providing care to kids who've been through these traumatic experiences. Because for many of them, this is going to be a painful reminder of previous times they've been displaced because of the conflict. And so the sooner that we can be providing these kids with this dedicated specialist care to be able to unpack these experiences, the better. Because otherwise, we know what happens when this trauma goes unresolved. It can have lifelong impacts on children.
Well, it's just, an incredibly heartbreaking situation that we're continuing to follow. Of course, the important work that UNICEF is doing. So, Joe English, Communications Officer for UNICEF, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And if you're wondering how you can help, here are some international organizations seeking donations to fund aid efforts. On the heels of the State of the Union address last night, President Biden is taking his message on the road. Earlier today, he visited the key battleground state of Wisconsin, where he once again touted his economic policies. He says his economic agenda is helping workers who have been, quote, getting stiffed.
We're building an economy where no one's going to be left behind. My economic plan is about investing in places, people that have been forgotten. As part of that plan, I talked last night about things we're going to do for families. Just a little more breathing room. Just give them, my dad said, just a little more breathing room. At the end of the month, when everything's paid, you have just a little more breathing room.
NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Kristen Walker joins us now. So, Kristen, President Biden chose a union training center as the setting for his speech today. What does that tell you about what this might mean for his priorities and his economic message when you think about other battleground states heading into 2024?
Well, absolutely, Yamiche, you're absolutely right. That is going to be a key focus if President Biden does, in fact, run for re-election. He made that very clear during his State of the Union address last night and at his stop in Wisconsin today. It is all about the economy. It's the top issue for voters. And remember, a majority of the country does not approve of his handling on the economy. So the challenge for the president is to essentially show not only that he's listening, but that his policies will help Americans. So it's about implementation, I am told, according to White House officials, implementing the policies that he's already signed into law and also finding new ways to help Americans save. He talked a lot about hidden fees, for example, last night, Yamiche. Some people would say that's a small thing, but the president trying to make the point that when you're trying to make ends meet, those hidden fees can be a very, very big thing indeed. So those are the types of things that are going to play in battleground states like Wisconsin and Florida, where he'll be tomorrow, Yamiche.
And certainly other things that are going to play are Medicare and Social Security. And today, as he was talking about this, he took it one step further than he did last night at the State of the Union. Take a listen.
I remind you that Rick Scott from Florida, the guy who ran the U.S. Senate campaign, has a plan. I got his brochure right here. Has a plan. Here's what he says in his plan. Let me open it up here. Sorry. He says, all federal legislation sunsets every 5 years. If the law is worth keeping, Congress can pass it again. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid.
So, Kristen, take us into his thinking there. What's going on, especially as he's trying to push back against Republicans who are trying to attack him and even call him a liar on this issue?
That's right. That was one of the biggest moments during his speech last night when he said that some Republicans want to gut Medicare and Social Security. You heard boos in the crowd from Republicans. And as you point out, Marjorie Taylor Greene shouted that he was a liar. He was, in fact, referencing that brochure among a few other Republicans who do want to gut entitlements. And you had Rick Scott basically doubling down on those proposals today. This is a flashpoint. This is a core message for Democrats. So don't expect President Biden to back away from that. And what was remarkable last night, Yamiche, is that when Republicans said they disagreed, he said, OK, well, we all agree. He even got them to all stand up to defend Medicare and Social Security, in some ways turning the table on Republicans in that moment. I've been talking to Democrats who say they believe that was a very strong, unscripted moment for the president, showed that he had fight in him and potentially counters the narrative that he's not ready to run another 4 years. Yamiche.
And as you talk about the next 4 years, this first trip to Wisconsin, it is going to be one of many trips, not only for the president, but for Biden officials. Is that right?
That is absolutely right. They are gearing up for an all-hands-on-deck blitz again tomorrow. President Biden's going to be in the all-important battleground state of Florida. Of course, that's where two potential 2024 challenges are, former President Trump and Governor Ron DeSantis. But his cabinet's going to be out on the road as well, crisscrossing the country. The vice president's going to play a big role in that. She was in Georgia today. She will be in Minnesota tomorrow, Yamiche.
Definitely a full-out blitz there. Thank you so much, NBC's Kristen Walker.
Thanks, Yamiche.
Nothing has gripped the nation quite like that Chinese spy balloon that was shot down off the coast of the Carolinas Saturday. Tomorrow, the U.S. Senate is going to be trying to get to the bottom of it by holding the first hearing of its kind. In a statement, Montana's Democratic Senator John Tester, chairman of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, says, quote, "We are still waiting for real answers on how this happened and what steps the administration took to protect our country, and I will hold everyone accountable until I get them." This comes as the U.S. Navy recovered large pieces of balloon debris. That debris could unlock more information about the balloon's capabilities and purpose. Joining us now from South Carolina is NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. And Vaughn, thanks for being here. Let's listen to what U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said earlier today.
Senior administration officials are on the Hill this week, and we already shared information with dozens of countries around the world, both from Washington and through our embassies. We're doing so because the United States was not the only target of this broader program, which has violated the sovereignty of countries across 5 continents.
And Vaughn, there are so many questions here. What else are we learning?
Right. There are revelations not only out of the State Department, but also the Pentagon today that are beginning to fill some holes here, or the U.S. government at least is trying to provide the public a little bit more understanding of what they contend that they have learned about what they say is a network of a Chinese intelligence gathering operation of balloons. And that this was not just one balloon here, but instead you heard from the Pentagon here today, as well as the State Department, that they say that as many as 5 continents had such balloons fly over them, including dozens of countries. Today, according to our Andrea Mitchell, Wendy Sherman from the State Department was making phone calls to ambassadors, fellow nations, informing them of what they believe was an intelligence operation from the Chinese of surveilling their countries using these very kinds of balloons. But also we learned from the Pentagon today that this was not just the only balloon that flew over U.S. skies over the last several years, but instead there were 4 different balloons that new information revealed that there were actually balloons that had flown over previously over sensitive locations in the U.S. The Pentagon did not articulate what specific sites these places were, but it is providing and suggesting that this goes beyond this particular balloon, but was part of an effort on the part of the Chinese that spans years and several continents, Yamiche.
And such incredible, fascinating details. I also want to ask you, what's the status of the recovery effort here? What more do we know about the debris also that was recovered already?
Right. We spent the day here in North Myrtle Beach, where the Navy was deploying multiple boats out to about 6 miles off of the shore, where they were recovering not only the balloon, but also Navy divers were going and taking debris from about 50 feet below the water's surface and bringing them back up and turning that debris over to the FBI and the NCIS to further analyze. Again, the Pentagon is making the case that they waited for the balloon to go over the ocean so that they were able to shoot it down and recover these items to better understand what type of intelligence capabilities the Chinese had, and that by doing and bringing up from the bottom of the ocean, the FBI and the NCIS will be able to better look over exactly what the Chinese had below that balloon.
And as we're, of course, talking about this, we go back to the idea that Senator Tester is saying he wants some real answers. So we know the Senate is going to be holding hearings on this tomorrow. What more can you tell us about that and what the Senate's hoping to get there when they hold these hearings?
Right. Just like the American public has had serious questions over the last week, you've heard from lawmakers who have questioned why the U.S., why the federal government, why the administration, why the Pentagon chose to allow for several days the balloon to continue to go over the American heartland. And what is expected to come of this 11:30 a.m. hearing tomorrow, in which will go before all 100 U.S. senators, is going to be not only officials from the Department of Defense, but as well as Wendy Sherman from the State Department, but also the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And so this is going to be really the first major briefing that federal officials will be providing to members of Congress who have been seeking and speaking out, demanding answers of this administration.
Well, Vaughn, this is a story I'm still wrapping my head around, the fact that we're talking about a Chinese spy balloon, but of course you broke it all down for us, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Yamiche.
In a broad restructuring move, Disney will be eliminating 7,000 jobs from its workforce. The announcement came after the company posted its most recent quarterly earnings today. The media giant said it will now be reorganizing into 3 divisions: Disney Entertainment, which will include most of its streaming and media operations, an ESPN division, and a Parks, Experiences, and Products unit. This is the most significant action the company has taken under the leadership of Bob Iger, who returned to the company as CEO in November. And still to come, a surprise visit to the UK by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. He is hoping his speech to Parliament will get him the weapons his country desperately needs. Plus, an NBC News exclusive, U.S. television cameras were allowed in to watch U.S. special training operations for the very first time in Somalia. That incredible report is next.
The United Kingdom is marching with us towards the most important victory of our lifetime. After we win together any aggressor, it doesn't matter, big or small, will know what awaits him if he attacks international order.
Today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy made a surprise visit to London, where he pledged that his country would be victorious against Russia. The UK Prime Minister made a promise of his own, telling Zelenskyy his country will train Ukrainian pilots on NATO jets. That suggested to some that the next step could be providing Ukraine with British fighter jets. All of this comes as the U.S. and other NATO allies prepare to send tanks to Ukraine. Later in the day, Zelenskyy traveled to Buckingham Palace to meet King Charles. Then he was off to Paris to meet with French and German leaders. Today's trip was just the second time Zelenskyy has left Ukraine since Russia's full-scale invasion of his country.
Yamiche, President Zelenskyy today making a surprise visit to the UK. It's only the second time he's known to have left Ukraine since the start of the Russian invasion a year ago. The president addressed both houses of the British Parliament, which is fitting given that he is sometimes compared to Winston Churchill, Britain's own wartime leader. That address kind of similar to addressing a joint session of Congress. It's an honor that is not afforded to every visiting leader. He also got a royal welcome from King Charles, at Buckingham Palace. The king told him, "We've all been so worried about you. We've been thinking about your country." Zelenskyy also went out with Ukrainian forces who are training in the UK on those British Challenger 2 tanks. We've talked a lot about those American and German tanks being sent to Ukraine, but it was the British who first agreed to send the Ukrainians main battle tanks. Meanwhile, here in Kharkiv last night, there was a wave of Russian strikes. We were at exactly this spot about 11 p.m. local time when all of a sudden the air raid sirens started blaring. We could both hear and see explosions all across the city. Yamiche, our team is fine. Fortunately, there were no injuries reported in Kharkiv, but one missile fell on a public park, sending shrapnel like this ripping through an area where just hours earlier families had been gathered. Yamiche.
Striking to see that shrapnel. Thank you so much, Raf Sanchez, for that report. And for the very first time, U.S. television cameras have been allowed inside a special forces operation in Somalia. NBC News national security and Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kuby embedded with the team for an exclusive look at how the U.S. military is assisting Somalian soldiers, in the fight against terrorist organizations like al-Shabaab.
Tonight in Somalia, an urgent fight against one of the world's biggest terror threats. We're with U.S. forces now training Somali troops in live fire drills and hand-to-hand combat. The target, al-Shabaab, the al-Qaeda subsidiary responsible for deadly attacks across Africa, including on U.S. civilians. U.S. troops are not on the front lines here, but do watch from overhead drones. This never-before-seen video shows Somali forces taking back territory that al-Shabaab once held.
This is the Joint Operations Center. The video was first seen here, where the U.S. military monitors drone feeds of Somali special operators during missions.
When trouble arises, the U.S. can provide support with airstrikes. That decision made by the commander of the U.S. Special Operations Task Force, East Africa. We can't identify him for safety concerns. He says he turns down more strikes than approves, often to avoid civilian casualties.
One strike won't win or lose this war, but one bad strike will take that authority and capability away from us and have ramifications that impact not only us, but also the international community that's here supporting Somalis.
About 350 recruits graduated today. They're now Somali Special Forces, and dozens of these men and women will be on the front lines in the battle against al-Shabaab in a matter of days.
That includes a handful of women.
It's giving women opportunities.
At 24, she's already seen combat.
I wasn't afraid at all. I would actually go again.
Even without the terror threat, Somalis face bleak conditions. They're enduring their worst drought ever. Nearly half the population is starving.
Is the world doing enough to help the Somali people?
No, the American people are. The American people have been extremely generous. We really need to see Somalia's partners, traditional partners, new partners, respond to this human tragedy.
Making matters worse, al-Shabaab's retaliation tactics, but these new soldiers remarkably undeterred. Tonight, celebration, and hope in a place that desperately needs it. Courtney Kuby, NBC News, Baladogle, Somalia.
Courtney Kuby going behind the scenes there for us and bringing us that exclusive reporting. Thank you so much. And after the break, another twist in the Murdaugh murder trial. We'll tell you why the court had to be evacuated today. Plus, the battle over gas stoves is heating up. A city in Oregon is officially banning them from new homes. So could your town be next? And former Twitter executives were on Capitol Hill today. The focus, Hunter Biden. We'll explain when we come back. It's now time for some of the big headlines we're watching tonight. Memphis Police Department records have revealed that one of the officers involved in the fatal beating of Tyree Nichols took photos of him after he was attacked. The officer, Demetrius Haley, sent at least one photo of Nichols to at least 5 people. Haley is also the officer who physically forced Nichols out of his car during the initial traffic stop. Today in South Carolina, a bomb threat temporarily derailed the double murder trial of Alec Murdaugh. Jurors were hearing more testimony when they were suddenly evacuated. Courthouse officials say they received an anonymous call-in threat from a male-sounding voice. But 2 hours later, police deemed the area safe. The man accused of killing 23 people in a racist attack at a Walmart just pleaded guilty to 90 federal charges. The shooting happened back in 2019 in El Paso, Texas, and was one of the deadliest mass shootings in our nation's history. The suspect changed his plea after the government announced it would not seek the death penalty for the hate crime and firearms violations he faces. And actor Alec Baldwin is asking the special prosecutor on his Rust shooting case to be removed. His legal team argues Andrea Reeb should be barred from the prosecution's table because she is a member of the state's House of Representatives. This appears to be in conflict with the state constitution, which is a member of the legislature, quote, may not exercise any powers properly belonging to either the executive or judicial branch. And in New Zealand, police just discovered 3 tons of cocaine floating in the Pacific Ocean. They say it's worth about $320 million US, and it was likely on its way to Australia. No arrests have been made yet. And what is your preference when it comes to cooking, gas or electric? The debate over stoves has been made its way now from kitchens to local city councils to even federal agencies in Washington, D.C. The controversy stems from new research on the effects of gas stoves. One study found that almost 13% of current childhood asthma in the U.S. may be linked to gas stoves. In California, researchers say gas stoves are producing cancer-causing chemicals. Another study found that even when turned off, gas stoves are leaking millions of tons of methane each year. Earlier this month, the head of the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission told Bloomberg that gas stoves are, quote, a hidden hazard, and that products that cannot be made safe can be banned. But according to the commission, a ban is not currently being considered. That is not stopping some cities from phasing out gas appliances altogether. In Eugene, Oregon, it's the latest municipality to enact an ordinance banning natural gas hookups in most new construction. Similar ordinances have been passed in New York City and San Francisco. And with me now is Megan Banta. She's a local government reporter for the Register Guard, a newspaper in Eugene, Oregon. Thank you so much for being here. So when did this issue become a real issue, an issue enough to really make the city have an actual ordinance against this in Eugene?
So the city has been talking about the link between, natural gas and health hazards and carbon emissions since before I moved here from the Midwest. But, since I got here in January 2021, it's been a consistent topic during public forums. There's a coalition known as Fossil Free Eugene that's been pushing for a ban on natural gas and other fossil fuels for a while. And within the last year, City Council directed staff to draft ordinances that would ban natural gas and other fossil fuels in residential, commercial, and industrial buildings. And this start with new residential construction is one that city officials identified as kind of an easy one, because the buildings don't exist yet, and they can kind of take that action while they discuss the remaining ordinances.
And Megan, I want to ask you, there are some city leaders who voted against the ordinance. What are they saying for why they took that action?
So they referenced some, just some fears that people brought up during public forums about, concerns about energy choice. And they said that their preference would be to put forward a more comprehensive slate of ordinances rather than just passing one at a time, and to try to package them with incentives that don't really yet exist yet. And they also worried that because this has become such a divisive issue in the community in the past couple of months, that the impact on carbon emissions would not be worth creating more division.
And Megan, as you said, this has been a divisive issue. There's been a lot of backlash over this. The American Gas Association says concerns over national gas safety are, quote, baseless and misguided. So how polarizing has this issue become in your community?
Public hearings have stayed pretty civil, but there's definitely been an undercurrent of tension with people, talking about statements being drafted by law students and talking about, people not caring about the climate. And I think the extreme black and white has kind of been reflected in emails that I've received from the community where, people just kind of can't come to a resolution on this and, would want to see gas stoves stay or want to see them go.
Well, this is definitely an issue we're going to keep our eyes on. So thank you so much, Megan Banta.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And over on Capitol Hill today, 3 former Twitter executives testified before the House Oversight Committee. The hearing focused on the company's 2020 decision to initially block users from sharing a New York Post story about President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and his laptop. The decision, which Twitter later reversed, is now touted by many in the GOP as an example of anti-conservative censorship. Twitter's then CEO did admit that the approach was wrong. NBC News senior congressional correspondent Garrett Haight, he joins us now. So, Garrett, you were there, of course. Break this all down. How did the hearing go today? And what more do we know about the approach that Republicans and Democrats took here?
Well, look, this hearing has been a sure thing since Republicans took control of the House. They wanted to dive into this specific decision related to the Hunter Biden laptop story in the days before the 2022 election, the days before the 2020 election, as kind of a major jumping off point here. But they also wanted to probe this question of conservative bias in social media, anti-conservative bias in social media more deeply. So we did see some questions on that topic. We also saw some members of the Oversight Committee using their time really to just excoriate these former executives from Twitter for the handling of their personal Twitter accounts. Marjorie Taylor Greene did not ask a question. She simply used her time to go after these members for how they handled the banning of her Twitter account in the past. Lauren Boebert asked questions about why her account was so-called shadow banned, the idea that her tweets weren't seen or were somehow hidden. But under examination from some of the Democratic members, what we saw here a little bit, really kind of in the combined back and forth, was the messy business that is content moderation. As you pointed out, the Twitter executive said that they overreacted to the Hunter Biden story because they were thinking about misinformation from 2016. And it turns out it wasn't just Democrats or the FBI or other kind of non-conservative voices who were reaching out to Twitter asking for content moderation. It was the Trump White House, too. Here's one exchange that illuminated how this problem is handled on different levels.
Earlier, you testified about a 2019 tweet that was about President Trump, and I think it was from Ms. Teagan. What was the tweet about?
Would you like me to give the direct quote?
Yeah.
Please excuse my language. This is a direct quote, but Chrissy Teigen referred to Donald Trump as a...
Okay. Free speech. And what happened after Ms. Teagan posted her tweet? What did the White House do? What did the Trump White House do?
From my understanding, the White House reached out to ask that this tweet be removed.
Yamiche, we bleeped the tweet. I know you're operating a family show here tonight, but it kind of gets to the point here that everybody who was using Twitter and monitoring the conversation on it had content moderation issues, whether it was that from the Trump White House, complaints about how COVID was handled, complaints about the FBI getting involved to tamp down threats of violence, a little bit of something for everybody in what is certain to be the first of many hearings on this broader subject in this Republican-controlled Congress.
Definitely going to be a lot more of these sorts of hearings. But I want to ask you, of course, when you say Twitter, the name Elon Musk follows so closely behind. So did he come up at all today?
Of course he did. Look, Republicans think that Musk taking over here was a turning point for Twitter. He was the one, after all, who fired all of these executives who testified today. They believe he is a solution to these problems and that he's the one who brought them to the fore by releasing what's called the Twitter files, largely internal emails, Slack chats, other documentation to friendly journalists and others who've been able to kind of sift through it. Democrats clearly don't see it the same way, but Republicans have really embraced Musk, the social media entrepreneur. Remember, he was on the Hill a little over a week ago, meeting with Kevin McCarthy and James Comer, the chair of this committee. They see him as an ally, at least in this space, a turnabout from when he was the electric car guy that Democrats really embraced so closely.
Definitely a big turnaround and definitely a story we're going to have to keep watching here. Thank you so much, Garrett Haake. And still ahead, revisiting a painful history. One NBC reporter slept overnight on a plantation where his enslaved ancestors lived. He tells us why the experience was unlike anything he expected. But first, honoring Black history. Tonight, we're remembering the Montgomery bus boycott, which, of course, began with a woman named Rosa Parks. She was arrested and fined for refusing to give up her bus seat to a white man. That led to the boycott, which was the first large-scale demonstration against segregation. It lasted from December 5th, 1955 to December 20th, 1956, and was led by a young pastor by the name of Martin Luther King Jr. We'll be right back. The Magnolia Plantation is situated on nearly 400 acres in South Carolina. It serves as a painful reminder of the unceasing brutality of slavery. Today, the plantation encourages visitors with the hope of gaining a stronger connection to our past. An experienced reporter, Curtis Bunn, described as, quote, no controlling the endless thoughts of the horrors experienced by the captive Africans. To talk more about that experience is Curtis Bunn, a reporter for NBC BLK. So, Curtis, thanks so much for being here. You mentioned in the article that some of your friends, that they would not go on a trip like this. Tell me a bit about what motivated you to take on this experience, to sleep where your enslaved ancestors once slept.
Yeah, well, it was great to be here with you, Ms. Alcindor. As a journalist of a long time now, pretty much everything I encounter or see in my life, I'm always thinking in terms of a potential story. And I was researching a book that came out in 2021 that I wrote with 4 other journalists called Say Their Names, How Black Lives Came to Matter in America. And during that research, I learned about what's happening with the Slave Dwelling Project in Charleston by Joe McGill. And I learned later that not only could you visit the plantation, but you could actually spend the night there. And as someone who is always interested in a little bit of adventure, and certainly have a close connection to my heritage and wanted a stronger connection to my ancestors, I thought it would be a good idea to make that trip. And it was quite an experience, to say the least.
And you say it was quite an experience. Tell us a bit more about what it was like spending time at this plantation, and in particular, what it was like interacting with the white visitors who also you wrote about in your article.
Yes, it's really not just going there and sleeping overnight, but they set up a fireside chat where Blacks and whites come together. In the case of my experience, there were 22 of us evenly split, and we talked about race for an hour, race in the country. And the white participants were there because they said they wanted to be a part of the solution to a growing problem of marginalization of Black people in America. And the Black people there were certainly listening, but also pretty tired about the things that are continue to happen in America. And so with that as a backdrop, you then went in at around 9 o'clock, we went into the cabins. And my wife and I went. We certainly were ill prepared for what we were about to experience. I don't know what I was thinking, but the images that I'm seeing right here are far more luxurious than what we experienced. There was no electricity, there were no beds, there was no running water. And as the night grew older, it got colder. And so it was a very moving experience, harrowing. We were sad, we were angry. And of course, around 4 a.m., the part that made the trip worthwhile, but also the scariest, was we heard off in the distance toward the cemetery back there, a woman screaming. And I had finally nodded off. My wife woke me up and said, "Do you hear this?" And we had gone to the mountains in North Georgia for a weekend, and we heard strange animals that were distinctly animals. This was a human woman's voice screaming. And it was very difficult to process in that moment. Later, I felt a stronger connection. I think they were trying to communicate with us, because there was a white couple in the cabin next to us, and my wife asked them in the morning, "Did you hear that screaming around 4 o'clock?" And they said, "We didn't go to sleep all night and we didn't hear anything." So I think that was confirmation. And I'm not a metaphysical kind of person, but something happened there in that experience that made it worthwhile, even though in that moment it was quite eerie.
I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just listening to you talk about this. Now, you talk about the range of emotions that you felt from sad to connecting with your ancestors. How have you been able to process this experience since?
It's something that I carry with me every day. I was talking to my son earlier this evening, and he brought it back up. And, I think that I left there feeling much more connected to myself. In 2007, I went to Ghana. I went to Cape Coast, where Africans were held prior to being loaded on the ships and through the Middle Passage and to islands and other places, and then to America. That was another heartbreaking experience. This one was a little bit different because it was 10 hours. In Cape Coast, you walk through the quote-unquote slave dungeons, and it's a 20, 30-minute process. It's very, very difficult to imagine, and it's very hard to take that our ancestors had to go through that. But it's over in 20 or 30 minutes, and you leave there shaken, certainly. But this was a 10-hour experience where we had a chance to sit there and process it and talk about it. And then those screams in the night is something that you just don't forget. And I certainly do feel a closer connection to who I am as an African-American and an African and my ancestors. And I understand the strength that we have as Black people more, because the conditions that they had to endure can only be done by people of strength.
Well, it's so moving to hear you talk about this. The article was so moving, so I hope people can go on NBCnews.com and read it. So thank you so much, Curtis Bunn of NBC BLK.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
And today, there are around 600 people in California who can't have children because that state forced them to get sterilized or sterilize them without their knowledge. Now, the state is trying to locate them to pay them at least $15,000 each in reparations. The program goes away in a year, and so far, just 51 people have received payments. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard has more.
I felt less than a woman. And when I got out and I saw little babies, it would break my heart, because I was like, I can never do that again. I can never bring life into this world.
She'd never be able to bring life into this world because of the California prison system. Moonlight Pulido sterilized without consent while behind bars. And for nearly 2 decades, Pulido thought she was alone. A Native American woman, she was released last year after the state granted her parole, relieving her of an initial life sentence.
What happened to you while you were in prison?
I got a pass to go see the doctor one day for just a normal routine checkup. And he came back and he said that I had 2 growths that had the potential to turn into cancer. The doctor asked me, would I be willing to have them removed? And of course I said, yeah.
What she says was conveyed to her to be a life-saving procedure turned into a nightmare.
I came out of the surgery and I hurt so bad. And the nurse is changing the bandages and I go, excuse me. I said, I don't feel right. What was done to me? She turned around and looked at the paperwork and looked back at me nonchalantly. She goes, you had a full hysterectomy.
Pulido went through the procedure in 2005. For 15 years, she was unaware that she was one of nearly 600 living survivors. Some, though, dating back to the earliest 20th century and the eugenics movement.
California was one of the first states to pass a eugenic sterilization law, and it later became one of the most active operating states in the country. There were 20,000 people sterilized in California between the initial law in 1909 and approximately 1979.
Then in 2014, a state audit found that the state illegally sterilized 144 women from 2005 to 2013. We know the impact through the numbers, but what is the human toll that they've taken?
This portended a lifetime of shame for people. It meant that they had to either hide or try to explain for the rest of their lives that someone considered them individuals who simply should not reproduce.
In 2021, California became the third state to approve a reparations program for forced sterilizations, joining North Carolina and Virginia. But California was the first state to also include more recent victims from its prison system. The payout, at least $15,000 per person.
I'm grateful for it because I really need it right now, but I would really love to hear an I'm sorry. I apologize, but I know I'll never get that.
Some advocates are worried all the victims won't be found in time.
Is time running out?
Oh, certainly. We know there are many people who still do not even know this is going on, that they may be eligible.
There's only 1 year left to find living victims before the $4.5 million program shuts down. But for many, the medical records required for approval are elusive.
The problem is CDCR, the prison system, has already gotten rid of some of those records because they're older than 10 years. We're hopeful, but we don't know where everyone is. They don't know where everyone is.
Last month, the California Victim Compensation Board began airing TV and social media ads to reach survivors. Polito has taken matters into her own hands, helping others navigate the reparations.
What's your message to other women who are out there?
To look forward, not look backward.
Do you feel like this helps you move forward?
It does. Being able to reach back and help those, the other people that were victimized just like me, no, I can't leave them behind.
Such critical reporting by that really heartbreaking situation. Vaughn Hilliard, thank you so much. And before we go, a military mom's homecoming that her children will never forget. Their story is coming up. But first, you have to see this. Earlier this month, 10-year-old Jeremiah went viral for his NFL sideline reporting. Here he is interviewing Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams.
Now I'm here with Davante Adams, wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders. He's got 95 receptions for 1,443 yards. He's got 14 touchdowns, and he averages 15 yards per catch. Wow. Man, it's an honor and a privilege to meet you today.
Pleased to meet you, man.
He is incredibly impressive, right? Well, the Raiders thought so, and they surprised Jeremiah with a trip to the Super Bowl to work on his reporting skills. Bob Costas, you clearly better watch out.
This is Jeremiah reporting live from the Pro Bowl practice in Allegiant Stadium, and I have struck some great interviews. As you can see, I'm going to the Super Bowl this year.
After 6 months of deployment, Master Sergeant Sophia Ieja's first stop was surprising her kids at their school in Montgomery, Alabama. Ieja's son and daughter were in the cafeteria when she surprised them. Tears began to flow once her children realized what was happening, followed by a long-awaited group hug. Ieja now says the only thing on her mind is family time.
Rest and recuperation. I've been gone for a long time. I got to kind of get reacclimated to like the time, to the kids. Like they've been missing me. So just giving them my time and my family, that's what's first for me. So keeping my family first. We'll probably do a lot of like game nights and just resting and relaxing at home.
And before we go, some breaking news out of Turkey. The State Department has now confirmed that at least 3 U.S. citizens have been killed in southeast Turkey after Monday's earthquake. State Department staff in Turkey and the U.S. is working to get assistance to the family members of the victims. We do not know the names of the victims as of yet. And that does it for us. I'm Yami Shalsendor for Now Tonight. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.